Hi, everybody, and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I'm Desiree Holmes, Scherini, your host, and today I am delighted to have with me Joe Turiano. And let me just introduce him with my cheat sheet. Joe is a doctor of clinical hypnotherapy and a certified master hypnotherapist. He is also a certified family constellation therapist and a trained medical intuitive energy healer. He has extensive experience as a teacher, speaker, writer, intuitive reader, and a therapist. He spent many years exploring the metaphysical aspects of life, human consciousness, and the mind-body connection. If you're interested in spiritual work and supernatural experiences and what they mean for your life, check out his book, Awakening, which we're going to talk to him about, which is available on Amazon. And anyway, so welcome, Joe. I'm glad you're here. Joe and I have been, I decided I wanted to interview Joe because we both are members of the National Association of Transpersonal Hypnotherapists, and that's how we know each other. We've worked together, both on the board together, and but we got into a conversation. Well, we get in all sorts of conversations, right? One rabbit hole to another. And so I thought, well, let's have you on and interview you. And then after this interview, just learn about Joe. We're also going to be having another segment where we're going to be talking about spiritual narcissists. So stay tuned for that one. So first, welcome, Joe.
Nice.
And so let's start with, I mean, I know a lot about your story, right? But how did you go into what you do? You know, like everybody starts out as a kid on the playground or whatever. So what's your story as far as how you ended up doing what you do?
Well, my personal history is I was not the type of kid who had a bunch of paranormal experiences or psychic experiences, anything like that. I was just a mainstream Catholic kid raised in that tradition, told by both my parents, who were staunch practicing Catholics and who met in a Catholic youth group, that this is the way, this is, if you have any questions about anything, this is the belief system that we, adhere to and you should be loyal to. And that's the way it is. um, as I got older, as many people do in this modern culture, I got out on my own. At first there was this kind of thing, well, okay, that's what I belong to. But I began to ask questions, of course, and then I said, you know what, a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense. I really, I have a hard time believing a lot of this stuff. And that led me in a direction of reading about what I might call philosophical subjects and looking for answers in a certain way. But at that point, I didn't believe in anything paranormal so much. I wasn't into supernatural stuff or spiritual stuff or a lot of the things that I've experienced at this point. But there was an experience that I had that essentially led me in a different direction. And that was an experience where I connected with a young woman who was a coworker of mine in a way that I felt I just could not explain. I've since come to believe that I knew her from a past life. And a lot of people hear something like that and they're kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe you're just talking about it, something like that. But when you experience it in a certain way, then you know that there's something more to this. And when I'd heard other people talk about that up to that point, I was like, yeah. Then when I experienced it, I was like, there was just something about that I cannot explain. And I can second guess it, I can think about it, but that doesn't get rid of it for me. So that turned me in a whole different direction. I began to explore the idea that maybe there is a spiritual reality and try to find out what I could about what it really is. There were various things I looked into. I read a lot. There was a psychic was down the road from where I lived at the time. I lived off base. I was in the Navy. I lived off base, and there was a psychic, and I saw this thing, and I would not have been the type of person to go to a psychic, but I was in this state where I just had questions. I was like, what do I have to lose? I'll go in, I'll see what this person has to say. What the hell? So I go in and sit down, she says, yeah, I'll read you. And the first thing out of her mouth is, well, you just had a painful personal experience with a young woman who is connected to you with like a soulmate level, and you let her down in a past life, so she let you down in this one. And that hit me in a way where I felt like, it could have been a lucky guess. After it's over, it's like, but no, I think she actually read something that was there. And that was what I was going in there trying to find out about as much as anything. And it was the first thing out of her mouth. So then I was just like, okay, there's something to this psychic thing that I am not aware of yet. So then I started really reading extensively, researching psychic phenomena, like in a really kind of focused way. And eventually I came upon, amongst other teachings, Edgar Casey.
Yeah.
And when I read the history of what he was able to do while he was in trance, I was like, this this seems impeccable. Like if this is real and it seems to be, like no skeptic can say that this didn't happen. It's documented. They had someone write these sessions down. It was a stenographer, and this is proven that he knew things that cannot be explained. So I was just like, if this is really true, and apparently it is, then there's something here, and I want to know about this. So I tried to figure out just exactly what he was doing, and that's what led me in the direction of exploring hypnosis in a certain fashion or trance. Because he said in trance, and anyone can do this. And of course, when I was seeing the things that he had done, just the things which many people have heard of, I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do that. But what the hell? Maybe I could do some of it. Maybe I could do something. Maybe I could figure something out. I don't know. Let me find out. So I played sports a lot, growing up, and I thought, well, you know what? Every time I practiced at sports, I got better. It was like sometimes it was just a process that happened just from putting in the time and being focused and saying, yeah, I want to know about this, and I wanted to see what I could do to get better, figure out the techniques, figure out the methods. That always worked for me. So then I said, you know what? Maybe I'll just approach it like this. I'll see what I could do. And of course, at first, when I was trying to get this psychically or figure this out psychically, it was just a bunch of nothing. It was like all confusion. I was thinking one thing and another. I was like, I
Right.
don't, I can do this. It's like, then I just kept on practicing. I eventually practiced with some other people who instructed me in how to do it, helped me out understanding my impressions in a different way, helped me to focus and discern the things that come in that are not on that particular frequency. And sure enough, because of that, I began to get things. And as time went by, I would get more and more.
Okay.
And yeah, I just kind of kept up with it over the course of time, seeing how, seeing what I could get, because I felt that would help me in the experience of my life. It would help me understand what I'm doing here, help me understand who I'm supposed to do it with, help me understand what my purpose is, what's good for me, what's not so good for me, what mistakes I'm making, all those things. Just give me answers to the questions that I think most people have, or just about everybody has. So
Yeah, so since my show is Intuitive Journey with Desiree, I always like to, focus on, so it sounds like you had, you know, your regular in the box, Catholic upbringing. And then we all kind of, most people, many people, I don't know, come to a point where someplace in their gut, like you say, you're like, there's something more. There's something you maybe even within that to dive into at some point, or without that, Catholic upbringing to dive into. So you found it. So do you think with learning better meditative skills or with practice that built your intuition?
if you're speaking about meditation specifically, yes, I think the two go together. In fact, a lot of people don't make this connection, but hypnosis, meditation, they're all forms of trance work. They're forms of
Mhm.
focusing consciousness in a certain way, and it's an inner kind of focus. So when you learn how to do it, which most people don't, if you do learn how to do it, then you learn how to discern certain thoughts in a certain way, and hopefully, and I do, this is what I believe. I believe there are thoughts that come from a higher source, a wiser source, a better source within all of us. And then there are thoughts that come to us that are illusions, most of which we just create for ourselves. And those thoughts would be associated with what most people term, or teachers term, as the ego. We tend to confuse ourselves with mistaken type thinking because we misinterpret certain ideas or things that are happening, and we get confused about what's right and what's not right. So we go sideways in various areas in our life.
Yeah.
But when we learn how to,
Sometimes we go one direction and find out, oops, that was, not from the highest source, or like, wait a
yeah,
minute.
absolutely.
Yeah.
definitely done that. Sure. Even subsequent to even wanting to do that, there were times where I was still continuing to make certain kinds of mistakes. And I'm sure I make mistakes now. We all do, but hopefully I've
Yeah.
gotten better. Hopefully I've refined that. So I'm trying to do what's in keeping with my highest inspiration as much as I possibly can, whenever I can.
Yeah.
Go on.
So you through the interest in trance work that led you to become a hypnotherapist?
Eventually. I mean, I didn't start out. I always felt like I had a kind of ability to um, understand human mind at kind of psychological level. My original intention was not to be a therapist. I've gone through a lot of different, I would call it, changes in my life in terms of my attitude and who I thought myself to be. You know, when I've out of high school, I joined the military, and I saw myself as that. I saw myself as kind of like a tough guy. You know, I played all these sports. Um, I wasn't into the idea, you know, of sitting down with people and having them open up and talk about their problems and things like that. Kind of felt like, well, if I have problems, I'll just solve my own for myself, and it's nobody else's business what I have. And I don't want to hers either. Um, I went through many different experiences that seemed to be telling me that, oh, maybe there's more to this whole other direction that you, up to this point, have not wanted to follow. Maybe it would be better for you to allow for that. Maybe you should try that. In fact, I had a psychic reading. That was another reading, different reading, not the one I was talking about. I happened to sit down with this particular woman, and she said this is what she said to me. She says, you've been a soldier in many different past lives. You've been a warrior. You've been a person who fights and is determined and is highly balanced on or toward the male side of things, right? But she said you're going through this process in your life where, as she put it, she said your heart is flowering with compassion in the Buddhist sense, and you're developing your feminist side. And if you didn't know me at that time, like on one hand, I'm hearing that and I'm like, feminine side.
Yeah.
The other part was like, well, you know what? I think she's on to something. I don't think I'll tell anybody. But as time went by, I became more comfortable with it. As time went by, I said, you know what? It's and I encountered places and experiences where I realized that opening up more, being more sensitive, or um, things that I had not wanted to do up to that point were actually beneficial. They were uncomfortable at first, but they were
Yeah.
in the long run beneficial. So I just kind of said, you know what? I think I'll just try to continue with this and try to understand where the balance in life is, because I think that's one of the bricks that hopefully getting this life right is try to figure out where's the balance of things.
Yeah. And just for people listening, I think it's such it can be a barrier for people to wanting to better understand themselves. Because society or whatever, the terminology of male side or female side can be off-putting. Like, if you're a manly man or a feminine woman, you're like, I'm manly. Um, but it's basically like, the yin yang sort of thing, strength or submission, or that motherly or fatherly. The fathers are usually more, stern and rule oriented. That's sort of you know, masculine energy, and women are usually a softer and more, you know, nurturing, right? So that's where those terms kind of fit. But men can be nurturing, right? And and as well as you talk about the balance, as well as structured. And so also for women. And I think about, you know, that that dynamic is hard to come to a balance in sometimes. And it creates off balance relationships.
No doubt, undoubtedly.
Somebody is too much one way or the other,
Absolutely.
personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now tell me, you became a hypnotherapist
Mhm.
and to
Actually,
help other people to get to know
the
yourself,
first
or
you're interested in my educational experience in terms of therapy?
how you ended up, moving into your interest of how you help other people.
Oh, okay. The very first thing that happened essentially, so after I got out of the Navy, which I got out of after 7 years, I
Mhm.
got a job at the post office delivering mail, which is the idea like I want to do this thing where it's non-political. It'll be a straightforward job. I could just get the work done and go get this out of the way, and then I can go home and study what I want to study or read what I want to read, do whatever else I want to do. My bills will be paid, and I won't have to mess around with nonsense. Um, and hopefully it's a kind of it, it's just an honest way of earning your living, that kind of thing. I ran into a guy. Well, actually, the way it was I'd taken a class in psychic development. And that was after an experience I had, which I detail in the book, where I met a woman on the route who I was delivering mail to, who said to me, not me saying to her, she said to me, "I've been seeing you since I was 5 years old. I think you're the guy I've been waiting for my whole life."
You get that a lot, don't you? Yes.
Well, not quite like that, but I have heard it, and it is this thing that I've experienced, and I've counted it now at this point. It's happened in my life, I believe, as I recall, 12 different times where I've had these experiences with women where there's been this thing where there's just some kind of extremely intense connection thing. And usually when it's in a romantic sense, it's like this thing, like somehow you feel like you need to work this out in some way. In my case, it's never worked out with me. I believe that's because of karma. And I believe that in some extent, to some extent, I've had that comment in this life, which has helped me make my peace with it when it hasn't worked. But in that particular case, she's the one who said that to me when I was around her, as some people probably out there have experienced. I could see certain things, like I could call it clairvoyance. Like I
Uh-huh.
could see visions of other lives that we had been together in. So it wasn't just some line she gave me, like, "Oh yeah, I know you,"
Yeah.
whatever else. She knew it and I knew it. So we spent time together, but I never actually was willing to get together with her, because in that one particular case, I was the one that felt like, "I don't know if I want this. I don't think I do." So I just wanted to keep it a friendship. It got to be this thing where she couldn't deal with that dynamic. We ended up going our separate ways. But before we did, I said, I want, and so both of us were going through a period, I would say, of psychic development. That's what we were in. That's the overall purpose, that I think we met each other for. I helped her understand her psychic downloads, and she helped me understand mine. And we educated each other in a certain sense in the conversations that we had. Um, and both of us experienced more whenever we were around the other. Eventually, I mentioned something to her. "Yeah, you may want to go see a psychic. Maybe they could tell you some more about these impressions you're getting," because she had got them her whole life. She was
Okay.
born with a kind of psychic gift, and she had got a lot of different impressions, but she was still in the phase, as I was in the phase, of trying to figure out, what what's right and what's not right, what's confusion, what's not confusion, what should I trust and what should I not trust. She went and saw this psychic, and then after she went and got the research, "Oh, that was really good. I heard all this stuff," and she said, "And this psychic wants to see you." So that I went and saw her, and that she was the one who told me about the flowering of compassion thing, right?
Okay.
So right after that particular reading, which I was highly impressed by, because that would never have been the thing that someone would have picked up on if you'd seen and known me at the time. I did not give off that vibe, but like my I was the tough guy. Like that's what I want. That's the way I want looked, and that's what I care.
Right.
I was impressed, and she said, "You know what? I'm going to do this psychic development group. Would you like to come and join it?" And I said, "You know what? I think I will." And that was not something I would have done before, but it just seemed, what? I think I would like to kind of share this with some other people. So I joined that group, and I spent a whole bunch of time with those people in there. They got to be friends. I learned a lot about how to read certain things. I saw them read. I realized that a lot of things, I mean, I could do more than I ever thought I could with the practice, as I was talking about. Um, so um, there was another person who happened to live on the route that was delivering mail on at the time. And I saw at one point she was doing something with him. It was like this joint venture. And she was giving mediumship type readings, I guess it was. And he was doing something called family constellation therapy, and they were
Okay.
doing it together. So I happened to run into him. He was out, when I was delivering his mail the one time, and I said, "Hey, I know this lady, I saw you're doing this." And he said, "Oh, you know her." He says, "You need to come and see this work that I do." And I said, yeah, yeah, okay, sounds good. I'll come and see you sometime. Then the next time I saw him, he said, "Say, you need to come to see this work that I do." And I said, "Yeah, sometime I'll catch up with it." And he says,
Yeah.
"No, you need to come." And I was like, I said, "You know what? If you believe in it that much, I will come and see it. I'll come and look at what you do." And I'll tell you what, is when I did actually join in with that, it became this whole thing where that would not have been the type of thing the old me would have wanted any part of. There's a lot of emotional stuff that comes out. Um, it's it. There's an intensity to it. Um, and it opens you up in a certain sense if you participate in it. The old me would not have want a part of that. But as I got into that, I felt like, you know what? This is maybe something that would be beneficial for me, though it feels a bit uncomfortable, kind of like I said. This will help me be a better balanced person. So I pursued that, and eventually he said, I'm going to train people in this modality. He invited me to participate. Um, I did, and that was the first modality I trained in. Several years later, I trained in, a couple years later, actually, I went to a past life regression specific modality through Wolger USA, if you've heard of that organization. Um, and then I took my overall hypnotherapy qualification in 2008 at the ARE. And I went to the ARE because that was associated with Casey work. So I felt like if I want to learn hypnosis, maybe this has something to do with the way he did it. So I went and trained under Dr. Alan Chips. I guess he's
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
to yours, yeah. And so yeah, those are, and then later on, even beyond that, I trained with a guy who was an intuitive energy healer. He had started out as an acupuncturist, but he trained with some Shaolin monks and some people in India and some people who knew a lot about just reading people and getting what it is that they have going on medically, and then having certain type of energetic interventions to shift what it is that they have going on. And I had a particular experience with him where he kind of cured me of something kind of miraculously on the spot. I don't know if I ever told you about that. I may have.
Oh, oh, go ahead.
You want me to tell this, right? So he had actually been recommended to me by a girlfriend I had at that time. So this is another chapter of the story. I left this part out. After I completed the psychic development part, I joined. I was looking for a kind of experience where I could have that group thing going on again. So
Right.
I saw in one of the Casey books, it said we have this thing called Search for God, and it's this kind of
Right.
like organizational type thing where you can meet at people's houses, and there's no set leader, and they won't tell you must believe this and you must believe that. Just kind of people sitting together, sharing their experiences, saying, "This is what I believe to be true. This is working for me in my life, spiritually and otherwise." Um, so I joined a group like that, and I met this one woman there, and we were together for a certain time. And she recommended me this guy who did this energetic healing. That's the guy I ended up training with. And there was um, one particular time. Um, I was out delivering mail, and it was the middle of the winter, and I felt like, man, like I don't think I can breathe. This is the weirdest thing. Like my breathing is so restricted. Am I coming down with asthma? I don't understand this. So I made an appointment with him. Um, Went in, and through a combination of what he used at that time, including muscle testing and some other things, what he discerned was that I had strep throat.
Oh,
So yeah, I did not expect that. That's what he came up with. He laid me down
wow.
on his massage table thing, and then he had a couple hand mudra things that he sent me through. That was his method at the time. And right there on the table, my chest opened up and I could breathe fine. Like there was nothing wrong with me. And I was like, that happened right here, right now. I was like,
Wow.
so there's something to this thing that he does.
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting to me. So I would go to him now and again periodically, even though there was nothing wrong with me. I just wanted to, ask him questions about what he did and see what he would pick up on. I was just really interested in the process. So eventually he said, you like this thing. I can tell you're like into it. You're always asking me these questions. Why don't you come and train with me? So I did. And yeah, so I guess I kind of use those different four modalities in various ways frequently to help people understand things that they're going through that are maybe not on the surface of things, and then hopefully help to balance and heal the energies and thoughts that are associated with these things that are causing them to have issues in such a way that they may not fully understand.
Yeah, it's all connected, right? If you
Absolutely.
think about the concept that it's not really woo-woo, that everything's energy, right?
No, I don't believe it is. And a lot of this stuff, it makes more sense if people are able to articulate things that are happening and what have you. It's not all just about stuff that's out there. If somebody gets sick, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, the germ was introduced to their system, so that's what caused it. Yes, but what made them susceptible to that germ? Was it some kind of thought process or unresolved emotion? Did
Yeah.
that did that limit the function of their immune system and make them vulnerable to that germ in such a way that it affected them in a way that might not have affected somebody else? There's nothing unscientific about asking that question. I believe that the answer to that question many different times is yes.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well documented that, external stressors
Oh.
can manifest in illness.
Yeah, it's a well-known,
Yeah.
even a mainstream doctor would have to, say without a doubt.
And
Sure.
breaking that energetic tie, between the stressor, or eliminating the stressor ideally, but you can also energetically break that tie inside the body with energy work. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's a mystery because you can't, follow you can't take a snapshot of it, but there's documented proof of those energy healings working. So it's cool.
Undoubtedly. And one thing I've found throughout the course of this journey is that, a lot of people say like, well, psychic stuff, that's so irrational. But this stuff over here, this mainstream stuff, that's rational. It's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are many hidden aspects of reality that mainstream modern science, is just not advanced enough to measure or understand. And that idea, that fact, bothers certain people deeply. So they have to deny the existence of anything paranormal or supernatural or whatever else. And I can tell you that if they were to come face to face with the evidence, as most people have, as you have, as I have, as many people have, and I think the majority of people have at some point, then they could not deny it.
Right.
And so, they cling to this position because that makes them feel safe. It's very similar to someone who is a religious dogmatist. And
Yeah.
they say, well, everything that we need to know is in the Bible. And then you say, like, well, there's something in here, that maybe the Bible didn't talk about or something. Like, I don't care. That's of the devil. If it's
Yeah.
not Bible,
Or the way they left out certain books of the Bible because it didn't fit. Yeah, well, that's too out there. We're not putting it in. Yeah.
It's like this kind of space you can stay in where you feel safe because you think you know everything, rather than understanding, yes, there is more out there. And once you see or experience it, you're just gonna have to say, you know what? Yes, there is. And
Yeah,
I would say that the evidence for that is it's overwhelming. There's absolutely no question. And I know you've seen it. I know I've seen it. I mean,
and it really is one of those things that it you can question, because we're so stuck in a material world and the 2D or 3D, I'm sorry, 3D existence, that it's, unless someone has experienced it, that they're like, oh, I don't know about that. But once, sort of like a past life regression, for example, once you do, or once you go, oh, well, that's fascinating. You can actually, like you said, look it up, and what you experienced, or a name or a place or whatever, and find historic documentation often. And it's like,
all the time, but I have, and maybe you
yeah,
have. Yeah.
yeah,
I found evidence of a person I was, name,
mm-hmm,
some other sites. Yeah, in a way that I think can absolutely not be explained. Yeah. I
yeah,
think once you hear all the details of the story, and if you've experienced them the way I did, there's not the slightest question, that there's something here that just simply no one can
There's something
explain.
going on. Yeah. Speaking of, so I've got your book here. So tell me, speaking of things that can't be explained, tell us about your book, Awakening a Spiritual Memoir. And I have read it, and it it is full of, you know, those personal experiences. And what was the book to you? Why did you want to share it? And what's the overall, you know,
Well, actually, the reason I sat down and wrote it, I have been interested in writing over a number of years, but the reason I actually did sit down and write it, I guess I have to say, is a mutual friend of ours, Randy Tate, said, you've had a really interesting life. Why don't you sit down and write something about that? I said, I think I will. So I did. Um, and I felt that through talking about my experiences, other people could understand experiences maybe they have had. And just as we mentioned, see that this stuff is not way out there. This isn't so weird. This isn't so woo-woo. I mean, poll after poll says 60% or more of the people who respond have had some type of paranormal experiences in their lives that they know is paranormal. That being the case, I think for people to understand what this stuff is really about and maybe understand how they can amplify it can help people in their lives to, again, just as I was talking about before, know what it is that they're doing here and where they belong and what choices they should make in life in order to find where it is that they can find purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I appreciate how you tie in, your life path with um, learning experiences and taking in that information from past life experiences where you've been able to explore past life and then reflect on, how's that repeating itself? Am I still repeating a pattern? Or is there something I learned that I can bring forward? And especially in interpersonal relationships, it's like, oh, here we go again.
yeah.
So can you share one of the events that you haven't talked to yet in this interview about an interpersonal relationship in this lifetime that you write about in your story as also someone that you knew in your past life?
Okay. I'll mention the one you've heard this story before, but I'll tell it again.
Yeah.
Um, I was in the midst of this experience, and I had this experience. It was in 2015, and this was years after I had already started to explore trance work and things of this nature. I had this experience that lasted for 2 weeks. And throughout the course of that 2 week experience, I would say that I was in trance in a certain way. And I saw many different visions. There were many things that were happening around me, not all of which I understood. Um, but I felt, and to some people, this would sound completely crazy, but I felt myself to be in direct telepathic contact with what I would describe as a Christ presence. I felt like I could perceive these thoughts being given to me that were insightful about my life, about other people, about just anything I could think of, pretty much. And I felt like these thoughts were helpful to me, other people, to everything that I was experiencing at that time. Um, some people would say, well, that was just happening in your head. Well, you made that up, or it was only happening to you. But, well, I know for a fact that that's not true. I know for a fact there were many things that happened during that time, and I saw a bunch of other people's reactions, number one, that would confirm to me that that was not just happening in my head. It was happening on some level that to this day, I don't understand. But amongst other things that did happen during that time, as I told you, I went to a Native American sweat lodge, which I'd never been to before. I participated in this ceremony because I felt like I was guided to go there. There was a woman there who began to sing in a language I did not know. And because I was in this trance and receiving these thoughts from what I would describe as Christ presence, I began to sing along with her. And I sang the song that she was singing simultaneously with her. I knew the words and the music. We sang the song together. The other
Wow.
people when they heard us doing it. It was confirmed to me afterwards. They said so. I was aware of it while it was happening. I was aware of it afterward as well. that cannot be explained.
Right.
When you're in there experiencing that directly, there is no explanation that can be rendered for that at all. I know that happened. Um, Something else that happened. This is the past life part. I was in touch with a woman from Australia at that time. About 7 or 8 years prior, I'd posted a dating profile online. She responded to it. And I said, "You live in Australia. That's too far away." She said, "Well, let's be friends." So for about 7 or 8 years, we just traded emails. And it wasn't because we're getting together. It was, what are you doing? What are you doing? All right. So I'm in the midst of this experience. And I'm seeing so many different things about my life in a kind of visionary state. And it just hit me intuitively. I said, "Oh, this is going to be a lot more important, this association I have with her, than I ever realized that it was before." And it turned out that while I was having this experience, she emailed me. She said, "I'm coming to Canada for a conference. Would you like to meet up?" I'd never met her before in this life. She'd met
Uh-huh.
me in Australia. I said, "Well, I knew I had to do it." It was like, "Yeah, all right, we will." Um, as I responded to that email, it sort of put me into the vision of a past life, which I had never seen before, even though I'd seen many or a number of them before this time. I'd actually been trained as a regression therapist. I'd never seen this one before. I saw myself as an officer in the American Civil War, and I saw her there as a man, and she was my adjutant lieutenant. We were like a team. I would go down to the battlefield, I would direct troops in a certain way, and I saw it was like we did this thing together. Um, and then I saw, and on a certain level, this was an understanding maybe beyond what I even knew consciously at the time. But what I saw was there was a part of me that was choosing to leave, choosing to die, choosing it was my time. I was making this choice. And I knew somehow that if I rode my horse to a certain part of the battlefield in a certain way, I'd be killed. Some part of me knew that. And when people say, hey, somebody goes out in a car, gets in a car wreck, whatever, they die, it's so random. It's not random. Sometimes people know. They know on a certain level. May
Mm.
not be able to always tell you, but some part of it knows. And that's where they go. And that's the way it happens. That's what I did. I was shot. How would you know the bullet's coming for you? I can't explain that part. I just know that some part of me knew it was my time and I was choosing. I saw my consciousness leave my body, roam around the battlefield in spirit form there for a minute. And then I said, "Well, I'm done with this. Get me out of here. I don't want to be here now. I'm out. Let's go." So I end up going into, and this is a part of what I believe involves our essentially the afterlife experience for all of us. I went into a dimension where I saw myself planning this life. It's a dimension where we go when we're between lives. And I see myself picking my parents, and I see myself making plans for certain things that happen in my life to meet certain people and experience certain things. And I saw extremely vividly that I was going to get together with this woman from Australia, that it was a contract, that I'd agreed to it, that it was going to happen, and it was meant to happen. Still had not even met her in the physical yet in this life, right? So the very next day, I was still working for the post office at the time. My job was to drive a truck and drop off packages in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh. There's a little sort of quasi-military museum right up from the University of Pittsburgh campus. It's called Soldiers and Sailors Hall. So I dropped the mail off at this one hotel. And again, throughout this experience, I'm hearing this voice, this Christ presence speaking to me like me to you. And I dropped the mail off this one hotel and I hear this voice. "Now watch, I'm going to show you something." Okay, what? All right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's drive the truck to the back of Soldiers and Sailors. Okay, I do. Buzzing through the back door. Okay, I do. Drop the package off the desk. Okay, I do. Says, "Now walk down here, turn here, turn here, turn here, then look up on the wall." There's a picture of the person I just remembered being and the description of the life below. And I swear it was like I've been struck by lightning. I was like, I think I almost must be dreaming right now because this is the most insane thing I have ever experienced. That picture that was sitting there right in front of me was the picture I had seen in the moment of my death. That's
Wow.
right there on this horse, like being shot. I'm like,
You're like,
this
there I
is
am.
crazy.
Yeah.
This is crazy. I'd never read an account of this person's life. I really didn't know who he was. Was not a Civil War buff at that time. I've since researched it after that, not before. Um, it was crazy. It was just crazy. I finally met her about a week and a half later. I drove up to Canada. I met up with her. From the time we met, it was just this thing. It was that experience that I've talked about before. It's like, okay, yeah, like this is it. We're getting together and it's gonna happen. There are all these synchronicities and things that were connections, this energy, signs, everything, all this stuff. Like you just know this person at a deeper level than you know other people. They get you, you get them. Um,
Yes.
I said I had this amazing experience, but I don't want to tell you all the details of it. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to guide you in a past life regression, hypnotic experience, and see what you get. I didn't tell her what time to go to or what place to go to or anything like that.
So she
Uh,
knew nothing of the story.
I think I may have mentioned something about the Civil War, but nothing else, like no details, nothing. I
Hmm.
didn't say go to the Civil War, though.
Right.
Where did she go? Right to that experience. What did she say? Everything I already seen. She told the story to me just exactly the way I saw myself die, the things I had done, the roles we had played, everything. There were like 100 to 200 details. It all was identical. I didn't say who I'd seen her as. That's who she saw herself as. Again, the things that we did, the way we did them, every last essential detail about the battles and everything else, it all matched. Like I had already seen what she was describing. She had not read the story. She didn't know anything. I did eventually agree. We agreed to get married. I moved to Australia. Things began to go sideways as soon as I got there. And I believe that was due to what I would describe as a karmic experience and me having to meet someone there who I did not expect to meet, who from the second I met him and from the second he met me, we were not going to be about that. And I had to, she always had to make was I going to follow him? And he was essentially what I would describe. And I just do believe this objectively, that he was a cult leader. And
Oh,
I was not going to go along with that, but she was. That was
okay.
the type of thing that she liked. And it got to be this thing like she was going to have to choose between the two of us. She chose his way and not mine. So I got dumped and I had to come back. There's this other part I've thrown in there. I think you've heard this before. After I came back, I had this other series of experiences that I could talk to you about for hours and hours. But for whatever reason, I got this office as soon as I came back. I was on the second floor of this spiritualist church, really old, interesting kind of looking building. This lady ran this church out of it. I had this series of meetings when I'm not really a church goer now, and I hadn't been before, but at that time I'm there in the building, and it's a kind of a different kind of service. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll check these things out. So I'd go. There was a series of five different women, like one right after the other. Somehow it was that connection thing that I was talking about.
Yeah.
One of them, I don't think I've told you this one. One of them, right after the service is over, just comes up and throws her arms around me. Maybe I did tell you about that one.
I think so. Yeah.
She just throws her arms around me and she says, "I know you're feeling the way I'm feeling now," and she was right. It was like love at first sight. It was just like walking on clouds. But she knew I felt that way. I knew she felt
Yeah.
that. Um, that one didn't work out. That didn't last very long. There was another experience subsequent to that one. I went in. There was one seat left. I sat down. There's a young lady sitting to the side of me. She just kept looking at me through the service like she knew me, smiling, like, look at me. And I was like, something's happening here. Met up with her randomly about a week later. And we had a conversation. I met her somewhere else a week later. And then we sat down and was like, yeah, like I know her. I know you, you know me. We got this thing. Something's happening. We knew it.
Hmm.
Out of that story I just told you about the past life of, in the Civil War. And about a week later, she texted me a picture of a gravestone. And this girl was very psychic from a young age, but it had bothered her. She had done mediumship, and these spirits who were not at rest were coming to bother. She blocked it all out. So she was trying to get back into it. But she had throughout her life got certain very, strong psychic impressions. And she said, there's a cemetery in this place in Pittsburgh that I walk in. And she says, I always thought this section of the cemetery, she had sent me this picture of a gravestone. this section of the cemetery was dedicated to the American Revolutionary War. She said, I found out today it's dedicated to the American Civil War. Well, the thing I had not told her is that I had already found my grave, the person that belonged to the person I remember being in that same cemetery right near that grave. And because I know the names of the people, or I know the name of the person I was, there's
Uh-huh.
still a record of the unit. So I go on the online record and the name that's on that grave is in the unit. And I swear, maybe more than any of the rest of them, I could read that girl's mind when I was around her. I would see pictures of things she was thinking, and I'd tell her what it was, and she would tell me that, yes, that is what it was. And
Wow.
that was the whole, like, that one didn't work out.
Yeah.
It
Maybe
was,
you just stop reading their minds because that could go south, right?
you know, part of it is just the intensity when you experience those
Yeah.
type of things. I think it tends to freak people out, quite frankly. I mean, I try not to make it too weirdly intense, but I know she's experiencing some of this same type of thing. So it
Um,
just, I have experienced that many times in my life, and these women tell me the same thing. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's it is intense, and maybe that's part of the reason why it's hard to work out.
Yeah. I mean, it's relationship on a whole nother level. It's not just boy meets girl, right? Then you got to go into all this, energy or past life experiences or whatever. Sometimes there's something to be said for ignorance is bliss, or, right? The simplicity.
Yeah, yeah. As a friend of mine, I had a conversation about that with. He's one of the few people probably I could say that he's experienced things like this enough where he can kind of speak from experience. He talked about that. He says he said to me that he felt he called that like a experience. So he described it as a karmic mate experience. It's like you get drawn together by this magnetic karma,
Mhm.
but it's usually difficult. It usually means the onset of a difficult and problematic situation. And he said, there are the other people in my life or these other connections that I've made. So I call them more like soulmates. It's like more of a gentle energy. And like, they have your back, you have theirs. You can trust them, they can trust you.
Mhm.
You get along pretty well. And but you don't connect on that super intense level. But he said, that super intense thing, there's just this sometimes it just seems compelling, it's just like something about this needs to be worked out or something needs to happen in some way.
Yeah.
Um, just exactly what that is sometimes becomes a question. And I realized after a certain number of times, like you can't force it. You don't want to go too far. Maybe that's part of the lesson. You have to be met halfway in a certain way. And if you're not, then it's gonna just not go.
And you'll do it all again next time around.
Yeah, the more if you're the only one who's trying and the other person isn't,
Yeah.
then
Oh, absolutely.
it just gets worse. It doesn't get better. um, that's something that took me some time to learn. But hey, it's all interesting in the end anyway. That's one thing I can say for sure. Hopefully,
It is.
I've learned lessons.
Well, and it's for the listeners there. If you want to dive in deeper, pick up Joe's book off Amazon. It's Awakening, a Spiritual Memoir. Yeah, more where this came from, right?
Yeah,
Um,
there were a lot of things in there. I've had a lot of experiences, I guess you could say, by this time. Like I said, not necessarily expecting to, but yeah, there are quite a few things that have happened in my life of various kinds, various types. And they still, they're still happening.
and they still, yeah, it's not going to stop, right?
Yeah,
It's not.
yeah.
But
So,
your comment about your girlfriend in Australia choosing the guru, that is an awesome segue to what we're going to talk about on my next episode. I'm going to have Joe back or staying with me. We're just going to record a separate episode talking about spiritual narcissists and gurus gone bad, and about the parallels between some spiritual leaders, cult leaders, and the narcissists. Yeah, and inevitably, it turns out many of them actually just are narcissists, and that's the direction that they go in, and it can be very it's the right word, have that power, that draw, and so we'll be talking about red flags, etc. And what to look for, not just in relationships, but in that. So anyway, wrapping this interview up. Thanks, Joe.
all right, thanks, Desiree.
I really enjoyed talking to you or hearing, everything about you. And again, everybody, Joe's book, right? And so I'm going to thank you for being here, and I'm going to end this episode and see you in a few minutes for the next. Bye.